And it's my pleasure to welcome to the Today's Leader podcast, Building Tomorrow's Best Leaders Today, the developer of the Executive Code for Purpose-Driven Individuals. Please welcome Paul Davis. How are you, Paul?
Brilliant, Tony. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
I say this all the time. I just love talking with leaders right around the world. And you're in Ireland. I'm in Brisbane, Australia. The sun is setting here. The sun is rising there. We can't have too many different contrasts. But you've got a really fascinating purpose and impact that you're wanting to have. So share first up, Paul, the Paul Davis story.
Okay. So let me go back. I originally trained as a management accountant. That was my qualification when I left school. And I went into companies. I developed my career as being a management accountant. I went to the heights, if that makes sense, in terms of senior management, C-suite level to CEO level in all different industries. So I've been in construction, I've been in manufacturing, I've been in professional services, and the last position I held was CEO of a nationwide retail of 60 stores that I managed. And then in 2001, I set up my own business, which is Davis Business Consultants. And the whole purpose of that was similar to what I'd done previously, which is helping business owners to grow and scale their businesses. So I've worked with solopreneurs right through to companies that wanted to go for an IPO listing on the Irish Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ. So I've a full spectrum of kind of different businesses and industries that I've been involved in. But a lot of the work that I would have been doing would have been growing and scaling business, given my qualifications and my career path. But there's kind of a hidden side to me that I don't necessarily or haven't necessarily talked about for many, many years. But that's coming more to the fore now. So.
Excellent. So you moved from management accountants into helping people find their life purpose. That's a big shift.
It is, and it took a huge leap of faith, to be honest.
Yeah.
So let me explain. When, as I was a kid growing up, I would get a lot of insights and knowings and imagery for people that I would meet, and didn't really understand it fully at the time because I was only a kid at that stage anyway. But growing up through my career and developing it, what I found was that the businesses that I worked within and the owners of the companies that I worked with, I was guiding them in relation to what would achieve them the highest level of success. So in effect, what I was doing is I was putting them on the right track. I was putting them on their purpose based on the visions and the insights and the knowings that I would get from my clients. You can think of it from an intuitive perspective. That's how I kind of talk to my clients on it. But being a trained accountant, it's not something you necessarily talk to clients with, in the sense of, there's this other dimension to me, this kind of hidden side, this deep, intuitive, gifted side. It's not something you can kind of rationalize, and it's not something you really kind of tell to clients. So over the years, what I've been working on as well as my own pursuit, is to develop methodologies. How could I substantiate the knowings and the insights that I get from my clients and get them to see the evidence in their life? And it's from that methodology, which I call the Executive Code, that I bring people through and guide them to find their own unique life purpose. And I do that by working with clients. So a lot of information that people would see online about life purpose. And, there's, a couple of strains of thought out there, and some people feel, well, we don't have a life purpose. We're just here to live, to pay the bills. And, we're born, we live, we die, full stop. And there's nothing else afterwards. Yeah. There's nowhere else we go. And so that's one strand of belief. And that's fine. It's people's beliefs. And I'm not here to change anybody's beliefs. But there's just the other strand of thought whereby people feel, or they get to a point in life where they just feel a bit lost, or they feel they're on a hamster wheel. They are looking for a little bit more clarity as regards what they should be doing with their life. And they feel there's an inner burning desire that they want to make a difference, that they're here for something greater. They want to make an impact, but they just don't know what that is. And what it involves then is people lose their mojo. They lose their zest for life. Anxiety goes up, stress goes up, their business starts to decline because they've lost the focus that perhaps they would have once had when they were developing their business.
Yeah.
And then they start searching online, looking for, what is the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? What am I to do with my life? And they'll come across the standard answers, which, some people talk about find your why. And I have a very, very different slant on that, because people try and find their why, but there's two things. One is they try and find it from a conscious perspective, meaning they're using their conscious mind to try and find out what their why is. And anything to do with your life purpose will always come from your unconscious. You'll be always guided by your unconscious. So therefore, trying to find your why consciously, you'll never get the right answer. And in all my experience, 100% of the clients that I've worked with, what they thought their why was has always been incorrect compared to the why that I uncover for them. Second of all, they're doing a job or they're building a business, and they're trying to figure out what's their why. And the question that they typically ask themselves is, why am I doing what I'm doing? But what they're doing right now at the moment may not be what they should be doing in the first place. So now they're trying to apply a why to what they're currently doing, which is wrong anyway. So that's one thing. There's loads of other things online in relation to, ikigai, which is the Japanese concept of finding meaning in your life. But the challenge that people have with ikigai, and if people are unfamiliar with it, think of that you've got it's a bit like a Venn diagram. You've got a lot of circles and they all intersect. And it's about, what do you love doing? What can you get paid for? What's their demand out there in the marketplace, and so on, and match it with your passions and this kind of thing. But one of the circles is mission. Find your mission. And if you merge your mission with what it is that people want, well, then now you've got meaning in your life. But people can't answer that question because they don't know what their mission is. They're trying to find out what it is that they are to do. And a very, very common one is people say, well, find what you're passionate about. When you find your passion, well, then that is your purpose. But it's not. It's absolutely so not your purpose. There's a lot of things, Tony, that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about, as you can see in my background, I'm passionate about all types of flying and every single type of experience that you can have with flying. I'm passionate about horse riding. I'm passionate about red wine, but there's nothing whatsoever got to do with my life purpose. And if people really understood that the origin of the word passion is to suffer. And if you think about the passion of Christ, passion means to suffer. So if you want to find your suffering, well, then that's fine, go ahead. But if people really want to understand passion in terms of what's going to give them the fulfillment, the joy, the meaning, the zest for life, well, then you've got to find your purpose first. So I use, in effect, the phrase, passion follows purpose. When you're working on your purpose, that's when your passion, your joy, your fulfillment, your meaning for life, your zest for life, that absolutely increases exponentially when you're actually working on your purpose.
Absolutely, and it's something that's evident with people that have found their purpose. You can just see that energy that they bring. So just to be honest, Paul, I'm trying to picture an accountant that's dealing with a client and talking about intuition and gut feeling, and that's such a foreign concept, I guess, to so many business people, because they expect their accountant to be the one that's looking at the past and looking at the data and being logical. And the other point that I'll just make is that a lot of people get stressed about this concept of finding their purpose or finding their why, and they really work hard to try and uncover it. I can certainly understand that concept of they're working consciously trying to uncover it, and they put themselves under enormous pressure in doing that, and ultimately end up becoming really dissatisfied around what this concept of why or purpose is. And then, so that's one comment. And then I also see some people develop or feel that they've got a why and a purpose, and then they'll compare their why or their purpose to other people. And, there's a number of people that say their why is to build an orphanage in Thailand, for example. And that's great. If that's their true purpose, that's awesome. Well done. Congratulations. I'm really stoked for you. But and sometimes people will look at that why and say, well, my why is so tiny, in relation or in relative terms to that. So in relation to stress and in relation to that comparison stuff, what sort of advice would you provide to people in relation to that?
Perfect. Don't. Full stop. Don't. So, let me put it this way. So first of all, you're absolutely right from the perspective of they'll. But let me put it this way. In my experience, in all the clients that I've worked with, and I've worked with hundreds now at this stage, the purpose that they thought they had was incorrect. So the vast majority of people that are out there that, as you say, they feel that the purpose is to build an orphanage or whatever it might be. It's in my experience, it's actually not what the purpose is. And the purpose is very, very unique to an individual. It's fingerprint specific. So, and the other thing is, people will never, ever, ever understand another person's true why. Never. Your true why comes from your unconscious. And it's only you that will absolutely get and understand fully that true inspiration, that true why. So trying to even communicate that why to somebody else, it's like talking a foreign language. People literally just don't get it. But unfortunately, human nature and human behavior is that people judge and people compare. That's part of how we evolve anyway in life, because we can see what's possible when we compare ourselves to others, and therefore now we can start to stretch ourselves or to grow. Now, some people compare themselves to others, and they get despondent. But actually, if you look at comparison from a constructive perspective, now you know what is actually possible, and therefore you know for yourself as regards what could be possible for yourself. But it's partly human nature to compare. So we'll either put people up on a pedestal or we put people in a pit, one or the other. But when you know who you truly are and you become into what I refer to as equilibrium, and I get people to imagine a pendulum and what I refer to as your genius pendulum. When you're in equilibrium, now you're being authentic. You're just being true to yourself. So if you know your true why, well, then that's what is actually inspiring you to move forward. And that's what you're getting. So none of my clients, absolutely none of them, will communicate what their why is, because they know they have an emotional response when they contemplate on their true why. And nobody else can get that. They just won't understand it.
That's intriguing, because so many people probably go out of their way to share their why or what they believe is their why or their purpose. But when it's their true why, they...
I noticed a number of years ago, and because, look, I'm a business consultant myself, I'm a business mentor. I've been doing it for over 20 years. And I'm the regional president for the Professional Speaking Association here in Ireland. And so I get to see a lot of people on stage. And I notice a trend coming through online and on stage from people coming up and saying, well, you got to find your why, you got to find your why, you got to find your why. You have to find your why, and your why is the answer to everything. And it started off with, a book that was published by Simon Sinek, which was Start With Why. So business owners felt that they were missing out on something, that they felt they had to have a why. And therefore, a lot of business mentors and business coaches went out, but you've got to find your why. But they didn't actually fully understand and drill down for themselves and ask themselves the question, well, how do you find your true why? And do customers really buy your why in the first place? So people didn't question that particular concept. But when you look at it from the perspective, business owners want to try and differentiate themselves out there in the marketplace. So therefore, one way of how they could do that was, well, let's go and share what our why is. So now it became a competitive advantage for some people, or that's how they viewed it. But it's an incorrect message to say, let's put it that way. And unfortunately, it causes an awful lot of anxiety and frustration for business owners in particular to feel that they've got to have a why. And you ask a business owner, the vast majority of business owners, what's your why? And their initial answer is to pay the bills, to keep the staff, to keep the lights on. That's their initial why. But it's really until they get to a particular stage and they realize, actually, what's the legacy that they want to leave? What's the difference that they want to make? And that's when they start seeking out a true why.
And I guess that why for businesses becomes more of a connection with like-minded people and potentially a bit of a marketing
Yeah,
aspect as well. So you're getting that message right more so than a genuine internal why. So let's dive into the concept of purpose and leadership because, especially in recent years, and I'd say the last 10 years, the concept of authentic leadership is front and center. We want our
yeah,
leaders to be
yeah,
authentic and genuine and vulnerable.
yeah,
And then part of the aspects of building good and strong teams is about aligning them to the purpose of the organization. And I guess when you're sitting back and you're looking and you're observing authentic leaders who are then buying into a purpose that may not be theirs, but is the organization's, and it creates that motivational aspect to
yeah.
performance. So what's your thoughts in relation to that? How does what you do fits in with the concept of, first up, authentic leadership?
Perfect.
And then we can talk about purpose-led leaders maybe after
Yeah.
that.
So let me come from a few different angles. One is if I bring you back to what I refer to as your genius pendulum. And your genius pendulum is part of the executive code. But when you understand the genius pendulum, and so just visualize that pendulum in front of you. And you can imagine that pendulum is in equilibrium. It's in a straight vertical pendulum. That's when your pendulum is in equilibrium. When your pendulum is out of equilibrium, meaning it's gone to one side, now you are out of equilibrium. When you're out of equilibrium, you are not being your true authentic self. You're emulating or trying to be somebody else. You're subservient to somebody else, or you're trying to overpower somebody else. That's when you're out of equilibrium. So a true authentic leader knows and understands when they are in equilibrium. That's first off. When it comes to, when I talk about integrity, I talk about being integrated, because some people say, well, what's the ethics of the business? What's the integrity of the business? People put forward what their values of the business is, and they say, well, we do business with integrity. But what does integrity really mean? And, are you really integrated? Are you living with integrity 100% of the time? And most people won't, if not anybody won't, because it's a moral concept. So when you look at it from the perspective of when you're fully integrated, so what I mean by being fully integrated is that if you think of the pendulum, think of the top of the pendulum as being your executive center. Your executive center is in your prefrontal cortex. Its whole role, part of your mind or part of your brain, is about objectivity, innovation, creativity, planning. If you want to get from A to Z as quickly and easily as possible, use the least amount of resources, that's when you want to be operating from your executive center part of the brain. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people are operating from the amygdala, which is short term. So they're not really operating from other people refer to as the monkey part of the brain. So when you think of the pendulum, think of it being the executive center being the top of the pendulum. Bring it down, and now you got your unconscious. And most people don't know how to communicate with the unconscious. They don't understand those inspired thoughts that they get constantly throughout their whole day. But your unconscious, to connect with it, think of when you've had a gut feeling. Think of when you've woken up in the morning and you've find the solution to a problem that you've been working on, or you're having a shower and you get an inspired thought. You say, I must follow through on that. That's that gut feeling. That's your unconscious communicating to you. And then further on, then you got the superconscious. That's what people refer to as the universe, higher power, higher mind, God, universe, whatever terminology people want to use. But that's the superconscious. When you're in equilibrium, now you've got a direct connection within each one of those, as in the executive center, your unconscious and superconscious. That's when you're authentic. That's when you're fully, truly in equilibrium. So when somebody is in equilibrium, they are being their true authentic selves. But one aspect that I've observed or developed as part of the executive code is I've identified 10 different genius roles. And an individual will play one of those genius roles throughout their whole life. And it's a role that they don't have to work at it. They don't have to train. They don't have to learn about it. They literally just naturally play that role. Most business owners and most leaders in business are emulating a role, which may not be their own unique, true, authentic genius role. So they're trying to be something else or be somebody else that's different to what they truly are. When you align all the aspects, and the other aspects that I talk about is your genius drivers. Your genius drivers are fingerprint specific to you. They're innate within you, and they are from your unconscious, just as much as your genius role is from your unconscious. So when it comes to leading your business, when you're operating with all the different elements in relation to your purpose, because there's 4 elements when it comes to your purpose. When you're operating from each of those 4 elements, now you're being your true, driven, authentic self to fulfill your purpose. You know definitely what your purpose is. When it comes to the staff within our employees within a company, what you can do is what I've done with many companies is you've discovered what the genius drivers are for each individual within the company. You discover what their genius role is, and you discover what their purpose is. If there's an alignment, and you can find an alignment between what it is that they are here to fulfill, what they want to fulfill, what gives them fulfillment, joy, meaning, and purpose, and that's aligned to the overarching purpose of the business, now you have a completely, fully integrated and engaged company of employees. Anybody that doesn't fit in within that are never going to fit in the business in the first place. It only transpires later on that there's always a conflict, and they're the people that most companies will want to remove out of the business. But now you're seeing a way, you're actually being of more service to the company and to the employee to find out what their individual purposes are, and therefore they get to pursue the path that they will actually reach their full potential with. But the company now gets employees that are fully engaged in the purpose of the business.
It's fascinating, Paul. And, one of the things that I will say is that I'm not feeling like I'm talking to an accountant. So, and that's a positive, that's an incredibly positive thing, because I've never heard an accountant talk the depth of knowledge and specifics that you have in relation to this. So I'm absolutely positive the listeners will be taking this all in. So is there a book coming from yourself in relation to this, or how do you use this with your clients currently?
Yeah, I've been writing a book for the past 4 years. I've already published 3 books. The first book that I published was Evolve. That was back in 2012. And that's a really, really good starting point for people. And there's a few hidden messages within the book itself, even in the title itself. And then I published two subsequent books. I'm writing a book right now at the moment, which is about Thrive. And that is where I'll contain a lot of what I talk about in the executive code. But because I developed a community over the past year where I bring business owners and leaders together to help them discover what their true unique life purpose is and be within a community of equally passionate business owners and leaders. That's where my focus is right now at the moment. So every time I think that the book is finished, there's more I want to add to it. The best way that I can give it to people is is being part of the community, because that's when they get it firsthand in effect. Yeah.
And you were saying it's a free community.
It's a free community to join, absolutely free community to join. And on top of that, I do a weekly live mastermind meeting, which is also for free as well. Which again, people turn up, they tell us what their challenges are. In a room, we help and support those people, and it gives them one leg up or one step up on their journey. And then obviously there are other areas within the community. I call it the Executive Lounge, and I call it the Pilot's Lounge. Just two separate, distinct areas within the community. In the Executive Lounge, I talk all about personal mastery, which is what I contain within the Executive Code. And then in the Pilot's Lounge, I talk about everything to do from a business mastery perspective. And that's where, given my background in relation to developing, growing, and scaling businesses, that's what I'm helping the members of the Pilot's Lounge to fulfill as well. So when you marry the two of them together,
that's excellent.
You've got a huge resource for people. Yeah.
And we'll put that link, of course, in the show notes. So I think that's an amazing thing. So Paul, who's inspired you in your leadership journey?
I've probably taken it from a lot of different individuals, to be honest. There's probably not one individual stands out. One that would be primary, as I was going through my career, would have been Richard Branson. Because I saw a lot of things, and I observed a lot of things that he would get involved in. whether it be from a charitable perspective, how he is literally brings, I would consider a very balanced individual in terms of, he's got a passion for people, he's got a passion for his businesses, he's got a passion for really enjoying and taking the zest out of life, whether it be playing tennis or whether it be, swimming around his island. But perhaps maybe and more particularly in recent terms, is because he wants to bring space flight to people. And because of my passion for all things flight related, one of the things I would absolutely love to do, is to see the curvature of the Earth from space. So Richard Branson will be one that I would always observe. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
And when you get up there, can you take some photos of the curvature of the Earth and show some of those flat earthers? Leadership is an evolving thing. Sometimes can be based around the latest trends or the latest research. But to me, it's a bit of an evolution. But there's some traits there that from leaders from previous past history, and there's the traits of today's leaders. So what do you see as being really important for a leader of today?
I suppose a few different things, and where we're going and where we're evolving to, and where I'm talking from a global perspective. Leaders that are more conscious. And I don't mean, trying to be more conscious or trying to be more empathic or to have more empathy. If you're trying, you're not a leader. Full stop. So when you're truly conscious and you observe what's actually happening on a global scale, and you understand who you truly are as an individual, there are some of the traits, and you can easily determine the difference between somebody that is truly conscious, truly understands what's actually happening from an evolution perspective on a global scale around the earth, and they want to make a difference, but they want to be part of, no, we've got to change how things are done here, as opposed to trying to copy somebody else or trying to be a sheep and say, well, okay, that's what everybody else is doing, maybe I should do what they're doing. No, it's about you knowing who you truly are and going after what it is that you're passionate about. But future-wise, it is going to be more around consciously understanding where we are moving as a population, because there's an awful lot of people that are asleep.
Yeah, and I guess also, Paul, just over the last 2 years, of course, it's been an incredibly trying time for everyone. And I guess a lot of leaders have felt that anxiousness as well. But, one of the key things that always stands out when I'm thinking about, what happens in a crisis, a leader's role is to try and keep people confident and calm. Yeah. That and with some sense of realism, and unfortunately, some of our high-profile leaders around the world not necessarily have lived up to that, which is the disappointing thing. When people needed leadership, we actually got politics, and I think that is really, really sad. Yeah. So, but I guess it is about that. I like that concept. If you're trying, you're not a leader, or if you're trying to be conscious, you're not necessarily a leader. And I really like that, because a lot of people will say, well, I've got to be conscious and I've got to be thinking about it. And you can see that they're structuring themselves as opposed to flowing naturally. So that's interesting.
Even from this perspective, Tony, if you look at anything from a social media perspective or anything from a public media perspective, there's a huge amount of divisiveness amongst people. So, and it's phenomenal. Like you look on Twitter or Facebook or any of those social media channels, you'll see people wanting to, for want of a better word, argue with other people. The smallest of things. Leadership is about unity. It's about bringing people together. So, if you're jumping into the camp of being on one side, and it's not about being on the fence, it's absolutely so not about being on the fence. It's about how can you bring people together for something much more greater. That's leadership.
Yeah. there's common thoughts and there's commonality that we can build on, whereas opposed at the moment we've got our echo chambers that people stay in, and that's where they feel comfortable because people feel the same. But what I continue to see with that, and I'll use Flat Earth as an example. Initially, the Flat Earth community all got around this concept of being in the Flat Earth community and thinking differently to everyone else. And then over time, we've seen it like splinter. So there's Flat Earth Society based on this model, and then there's another. And so I see that all the time, and we see that with left and rights of politics. We've got splinter groups because all of a sudden the general theme isn't attractive enough for people to buy into. But as you say, there's commonality there between what we all know is the right thing or the good thing to be doing. And that's what we should be building on to create unity, as opposed to just staying on our side of the fence.
Yeah.
Now, Paul, what's the vision for you going forward?
That's easy for me. I'm on a mission to save lives. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And I mean that from both metaphorically and literally. I see a lot of clients that come to me are lost. They don't know what they're to do in their life, so they're not really living the life that they are truly meant to live. So in some respects, and a common phrase that I get back from clients is, "You've saved my life." And on the other side, I do get clients which there's one that comes to mind that if I didn't return his phone call by that afternoon, he wouldn't be here. So there are clients that are either contemplating or planning to exit from this life because they just can't take it any longer. So I'm absolutely driven and on a mission to save lives. I've got a significant number of lives that I want to fulfill. It's a number I keep to myself. And by forming the community that I formed, it's my way of how I can reach as many of those lives as possible. Excellent.
What's, out of everything that you've accomplished over the last couple of years, what are you most proud of?
I absolutely love when people get onto the right track and they start to fulfill their purpose. It is just, I'm in such a privileged space, to be honest with you, Tony, from the perspective I get to see the impact that they make, the intention of it, what they're to do, the impact and the difference that they're going to make on other people in time to come, as well as currently. I'm in such a privileged position, and to get to witness working with those clients and putting them on the right track, it is just every single time it's just phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. So I suppose there's not really one thing that stands out. It's just I absolutely love what I do and the difference it makes.
Excellent. Last couple of questions, Paul. How can people connect with you? Because I'm pretty certain they're going to be wanting to do that.
Sure. The easiest way is just go to my website. So the website is www.paulwilliamdavis.com. And Davis is spelled Davis. So if you Google paulwilliamdavis.com, you'll find it, and all the links are there, whether it be to our community, to our mastermind group, to resources, all that kind of things, to the podcasts. Everything's on that website. Yeah.
Excellent. I think I'm going to be joining that community. It sounds absolutely phenomenal.
Very welcome.
So, Paul, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for investing in today's leader. And I'm just blown away by what you do and how you're doing it. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing to invest in people everywhere. So thank you so much for your time.